Previously on Voila there, I showed you how we used Ben Uyeda's platform daybed design and turned it into this boho chic queen size platform daybed. And this week, I'm going to show you how I IKEA hacked my mom dresser to this cute little orange dresser that now matches the bed with a fun new faux terrazzo detail. Let's go. The mom dresser I have is actually the original model, pre-recall. I'm going to use leftover bed materials to update this dresser. Obviously, the first step is to move this dresser out of the room so I can work on it. That involves taking the drawers all out and sliding it out. If you have someone to help, great! If not, flipping it on its side is very helpful to slide it out. I don't care if it scratches because I'm painting this whole thing anyways, plus you need to see the bottom of it anyways if you want to add legs like I wanted. The first step is to measure the open bottom to create a base for the legs to sit on. My 2x6 leftovers from the bed build was perfect. I measured and marked what I needed, and decided to split the 2x6 board in half lengthwise so it'd have enough material. But first I needed to make it square because we have angled sides. Once the sides were 90 degrees, I split that in half, or as close to half as I could get, and then I cut it to the length that I needed, which was 30¼ inch long. Since I didn't cut these exactly in half, I put them side by side, stuck my middle piece in, and measured 17 inches, which is the width I needed. So who needs math? Then I just cut the length I needed on my chop saw. I used my trusty Kreg jig to make my pocket holes to create the frame for the bottom. Using clamps to keep them in place helps a lot, so you can drill much easier and straight. I also used my square to make sure everything was perfectly aligned while drilling. And voila, you got yourself a base for your legs to sit on. Make 2 of those. Okay, now that you've got your 2 frames, I'm dry fitting them onto the bottom to make sure that they actually fit. And they do, except one side I cut 1/4 inch too short, but oh well. And now my cat is here to do one final inspection to make sure everything is cool. She approves, but she's also not very impressed. Thanks. I'm using spack screws, which are my favorite, to screw these into place. Spack screws use a Torx bit, and the box comes with the bit, only if you get the box. There's a lip on the back of the dresser that you can drive the screws into so that the dresser sits on top of that frame I just built. However, the front doesn't have that.
Butter.
So I took a countersink bit and pre-drilled holes so that my screws would be flush on the front panel. It looks messy and it's kind of ugly, yes, but it's okay because I'm covering the whole panel with another piece of wood so that there is no indent, kind of like how the new mom dresser model is. I'm measuring that panel so that I know how big to cut my piece, and again, using scraps from the bed build. And since I don't have an outfeed table, cutting it through once and then flip it to the other side helps for those long pieces. And now chopping off the end so it's the correct length that I need. Now here's the check to make sure that everything fits, and oof, like a glove. To join the piece, I'm using liquid nails and my brad nailer to attach the 2 together. I wiped away the dust, and then I added the liquid nails first, generously, then placed the board on top and clamped it in place so it wouldn't move while I brad nailed it together. I nailed the piece on, but alternating angles so that it wouldn't just pop off. If you watch, you'll see that it's not just a straight nail in. I'm doing it at an angle. And now I'm just marking 10 inches from the sides, and that's where I'm placing these legs that I got from Amazon. The legs that I got also come with the mounting plate and the screws, so it's just all in one. Now, if you have a friend, that'd be great because then it's easier to lift this up without hopefully not breaking off the legs that you just put on. But yeah, now I do my little Christy test to make sure that everything is a-okay. And it's all good. Now it's time to sand everything down. I'm using 120 grit sandpaper just to give the surface a little more tooth for the primer to adhere to. Even though the primer I'm using says I don't need to, I don't want this to fail. I've gotten this far already, I don't want to fail. And now I'm just wiping off all the excess dust off of my dresser just so that when I do paint, it'll be okay. And now I'm using a nail punch to pop in any nails that were protruding just a little bit. And now I'm also sanding the drawers outside because those I could move outside, and it was just easier because I'm going to be painting those first. And this is the primer that I'm using. I'm punching holes at the top just so that the excess paint can drip back inside a little easier. And I'm using a very fine, super smooth foam roller to paint this all on. I don't have a tarp, at least the one that's not got holes in it, so I'm going to use Christmas wrapping paper and some found washi tape to stick it on the floor to make sure it doesn't move. Make sure that you've wiped away all the dust before you start painting on. And I just did an even coat across the entire surface of the dresser and then waited for it to all dry. For any of the nooks and crannies, I went over with a tiny little brush just to fill in any gaps, and then just waited for it to dry. And now I'm just prepping the roller and the tray for the next coat by just wrapping it in plastic and a wet paper towel. And now I'm giving the drawers a light sand and going over with another coat. And I sanded with 220 this time. And also sand the 220 and then wipe everything down once everything's dried, and then did a second coat of the primer just to make sure everything's safe. And now I'm painting with Behr Marquee interior paint in a satin. And it is beautiful. It's in the color Maple Glaze. And I'm still using a super smooth foam roller to apply this on, and I'm just doing one even coat, and then same with the dresser. I'm gonna let this dry, sand it down lightly with 220, wipe away with a tack cloth to get all that dust off, and then do another whole coat. And while that's drying, I grabbed some parchment paper and I'm pouring out some leftover paint from when I did the headboard build to do a faux terrazzo detail for the knobs. I'm just pouring it out on the parchment paper. I'm gonna spread it out thinly and then just gonna let it lay flat to dry completely. Also, if this is something that you want to do, use parchment paper because it sticks to everything else. Okay, it's the next day. I've let that dry flat, and now I'm just peeling it off, and I'm going to cut them and tear them into small teeny tiny pieces. Then I broke out the scissors because tearing it was just not happening, so I started cutting it in teeny tiny little shapes, I don't know, and then putting them in this old Bath & Body Works jar that I had from an old candle, and then I will be mixing it up, and then I'll show you. And now just save this for later, preferably in the freezer. Okay, so now I'm just sanding everything down with my 220 sandpaper and then using a tack cloth to wipe everything down. This is already after I've already done the second coat, so just repeat that. And now I'm going to add a top coat just to make sure everything is sealed in properly. And this is the same top coat that I used when I finished the headboard. And repeat that same process for the drawer fronts and get all sides. You want to make sure that you got all the sides. And after that's all fully dried, you can put the drawers back in, and it's basically done. You can stop right there if you want, or you can be a little extra when I did mine. Oh, but are we done? Nope. We got some stuff that we're gonna add, some fun stuff. So I'm gonna first start off eyeballing of where I kind of want these knobs to go. There is no exact science or anything. I just eyeballed everything and decided that this was a cool spot to put it. I don't know. It's a piece of fur. That's all good. Okay, so we're gonna do 18 inches. Oh my gosh, there's cats, they say. They're brave, they're easy. Fur is everywhere. It's on my furniture. Let it go. Let it go. Oh. I bought this silicone mold a while ago and I've never really used it. I will eventually, but I used it to use as a general shape and template for my knobs that I'm going to use for the front of the dresser. Once again, I took leftover scraps from the bread build and I just drew out the shape, used a square just to make sure everything was lined up correctly, and then once I had the shape, I took it to my table saw, cut off the sides to make sure that they were all the same size, and then took my jigsaw to carve out the rounded edge. I also use this blade specific for a jigsaw, but it's called a scroll saw blade for the jigsaw because it helps a lot better for me when doing curved edges. And now I'm just taking my orbital sander and sanding everything down so it's all smooth. This is completely optional, but then I took my router and then used a chamfer bit and rounded off the edges just a slight bit so it would have a nice smooth edge. And once all that was done, I just took some primer and primed everything before I started painting. And then I realized that I forgot I should probably mark out where I needed to cut all the cut lines to make sure that everything can open. So after marking everything, I just took my combination square and then marked out the lines and knew where to cut. Took my chop saw, cut everything, and then I had to make sure that I put the same pieces. So I marked it on the back to make sure I knew which one was one side and which one was the other. Then I finished painting everything and doing one final coat of primer before I went in and did my first coat of the paint. This paint color is actually the same paint color that I used for the headboard. I did 2 coats of this color, and during the second coat, while it was still tacky, I took those sprinkles and then sprinkled it on, but that didn't really work. So I had to actually do this individually because it was so hot that the paint chips kept sticking back to one another. So I had to go on and do it one by one, which was very taxing. After all of that, then I just sealed everything with the same sealant that I used for the dresser. And now I'm just lighting everything up, all the pieces, just to see where exactly I want to have it, and started drilling everything in place. Sorry for the butt shot, but yeah. I used a small C-clamp and then drilled everything using those same spack screws.
Can we just not right now? Oh my gosh. She is so cute. I can't get over it. I did this. Oh my god. It came out cuter than I thought.
And after praising myself, I continued on doing the second set and doing the same exact thing, using a C-clamp and then drilling everything and screwing everything into place.
This. I'm so excited!
In the words of Rachel Metz, oodle baby, and I am so oodling all of this work. I used to hate this thing and now I absolutely love it. It fits perfectly in this room and matches everything. If you've stayed through this whole thing, thank you so much for staying and watching. And if you've liked what you've seen, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button and check out my other videos. Hope to see you soon. Bye!